PokeClass is sponsored by CollectorsCash.com, who are now stocking your brand new set, Dragons Exalted, at very competitive prices. Whether you want to kickstart your collection with a sealed box, or want those competitive singles for a tournament, Collectors Cash should be your first stop. Check out www.collectorscash.com after the show for all of your competitive Pokemon TCG needs. Hey there everybody, and welcome to episode 89 of PokeClass, and today I'm going to be covering the results of Autumn Battle Roads so far, so that you can try and get your head around the meta while there are still tournaments ready to be played around the world. There are obvious frontrunners of the format which we all know about, but the array of decks winning at the moment is pretty crazy. In the list I'll be showing in a second, there have been a total of 12 different winning decks, of those that have been recorded, which is a staggering number and could show signs of a healthy metagame, even though some may disagree. So for this analysis, I'm going to do things a little differently, as I have lists for both the amount of times each deck has top cut a Battle Roads and how many times a deck has won a tournament, both of which showing very interesting results. The first one we're going to look at are the top 4 finishers, which shows the most consistent top cutters from this series events. From this table, you can see the clearly most consistent top finisher and, more importantly, championship points getter is none other than Darkrai Hydreigon, which will probably come as a surprise to almost nobody. When set up, this deck has all the resources and strategy to overcome pretty much any matchup, with its constant healing, conservation of energy and energy acceleration thrown in there too. I'm definitely not surprised by it coming out on top, but I am surprised to see such a gap between this and Zek Cormeals, which comes in its second most consistent top cut finisher at 66. As Hydreigon is a stage 2, naturally you would think they would just be less consistent than Electric will be, but this seems to not be the case. I know that the numbers of both Hydreigon and Electric decks have been fairly similar over here in the UK, so maybe Darkrai is just too much for the 90 HP Electric to handle. I'm sure this is more the case. Bringing up third place again is Darkrai, but this time it's all by himself, either in straight Darkrai variants, Hammer Time variants with Crushing Hammer and friends, or with a second alternative attacker such as Terrakion or Mewtwo. At Worlds 2012, we saw Darkrai take the tournament by storm, and even with a huge shift in the format due to rotation, he's still going strong by being introduced into over 120 top 4 finishing Battle Roads decks, which is a huge number to say the least. In reaction to this overhaul in Darkrai decks this time around, you can see that 13 Terrakion EX based decks have also made it to top 4, and I actually feel that this is kind of surprising too. In a previous format, Darkrai was incredibly vulnerable to Terrakion, as we saw in the Masters Finals, but in this format, Darkrai has a more powerful buddy in the form of Hydreigon, who makes it easier to tech against Terrakion and its EX counterpart, with things like Shaman EX. Not only this, but an EV lighted Darkrai can now take a big hit from either Terrakion, not including a plus power, max potion it off, and then win the 2-shot race thanks to use of Hydreigon. Other Darkrai variants also have various support against Terrakion, such as Hammers and Mewtwo, which are both great at keeping Terrakion at bay long enough to squeeze out a win. In 4th place, we have another repeat feature, which is Electric, this time paired with Rayquaza EX. Rayquaza slipped a little bit under the radar when Dragons Exalted was released due to the hype of Darkrai Hydreigon, but it turns out this guy is definitely a top contender thanks to its unlimited damage output, pretty decent typing, and ability to use one of the most accessible energy accelerators in the format. The best part about Rayquaza though is the fact that it can one-hit KO any EX in the format regardless of Eviolite. Variants that run Tool Scrapper will only usually need to Dragon Burst away 3 lightning energy to get an easy 2 prizes, and as you can imagine, against Hydreigon, this is invaluable to winning that matchup. In Hydreigon heavy metagames, Rayquaza is a great play to take down Darkrai's and energy in one go, which bypasses their main strategy of being able to take a hit and just brush it off with max potion the following turn. This alone could result in good finishes for the deck, but it also has good matchups against the rest of the field, also giving Electric an answer to Terrakion. As for any surprises in this list, Garbodor based decks are trialing in the top 4 decks in 5th place, which is pretty decent considering it not being considered a top contender, but some of its success could be amounted to it usually being paired with the likes of Terrakion and its EX counterpart, making it great against certain metagames. Garbodor can do well in the right area where players aren't playing much Tool Scrapper and playing lots of fighting weak Darkrai's and Electrics. As mentioned in episode 87 of PokeClass, Ho-Oh is making quite a name for itself in the current format, and it's taken 25 top 4 spots over the Battle Road series so far, which is a great number considering the small numbers we saw this deck played in at the start of the season. Other surprises, or should we say disappointment, comes from Garchomp Altaria, which has only seen 22 top cut places so far in this Battle Road series, which to me has severely underperformed when compared with the amount of hype that the deck received. To be honest though, I'm not overly surprised that the deck did underperform, as through testing, you quickly discover that it isn't great against the likes of Darkrai, as they can take multiple hits from you, heal it off with Max Potion, and then catch your Alterias, giving you measly damage output at best for the rest of the game with just Garchomp. Where it has succeeded though must have been because where it lacks in late game power, it gains in consistency, which can contribute to quick wins, which is what it does best. However, hitting the late game is an issue for this deck, which has come apparent in the numbers we've seen so far. As for decks we didn't really expect to see, or had slipped under the radar a little, we have Accelgor appearing twice in a slightly expected deck with Gothitelle, and also paired with Empoleon, which is a very strange choice, but I'll go over that a little bit more in a second. The other strange appearance with 8 top 4 finishes is Klinklang, our friend from Nationals, which everyone has quickly forgotten about. Almost everyone did forget about this deck, and why? Probably because Darkrai Hydreigon has become a better version of the same deck, and Klinklang has lost Rainbow Energy, the way to freely retreat Klinklang from the active position with Darkrai's ability. However, what Klinklang does have is the advantage over Darkrai and Hydreigon's weakness, as Fire isn't really played all that much anymore, whereas Terrakion and other Dragon types are a lot more common. The idea still remains the same with moving energy and max potioning, but I feel Klinklang just doesn't have the same versatility as Darkrai Hydreigon, as it relies very heavily on Blend and Prism energy, making it very susceptible to Crushing and Enhanced Hammer, which is also gaining a lot of popularity at the moment. So let me just quickly go over the deck I just mentioned a moment ago, Empoleon Accelgor, which to me seemed like a strange concept at first, but after compiling a list and finding out how it worked, it actually makes a bit of sense and must be doing something right to get various top cut spots so far. This is a list that I've put together for you to try out if you're wondering how on earth it works. The main idea revolves around giving the initial damage to your opponent's Pokemon with Accelgor's deck and cover, which paralyzes them for the next turn, and then finishing off your selected target with Empoleon's attack command, as well as staying consistent with Diving Draw. By using Diving Draw turn after turn, you'll be able to draw into your double colorless and Pokemon more frequently than you'd be able to than just relying on supporters, and without the trainer lock, you'll be able to select your paralysis targets with catches. The strategy soon becomes apparent when you start playing with the deck, and it's also pretty good against Darkrai decks, as they don't traditionally play any switch, as you already have the free retreat built in. However, with Accelgor paralysing your opponent's EXs, they have no way to get out of the active spot, and then you can finish off their EX with attack command, gaining 2 prizes and only losing 1 if your Empoleon even gets KO'd. The Mew EX is there when you don't want to lose your Accelgor into the deck just yet, or you have a pesky Mewtwo to take down, and I'm sure you can create some really nifty moves when copying attacks with other colourless costs. So now that we know what has done well at Battle Road so far, let's change this table to the winners of the events and see how many decks converted their top 4 appearances into event wins, and this is what it looks like. And the table does look fairly similar to the previous one, but there are some quite interesting results which should be noted as to what ended up winning our events. The main thing to notice is that Rayquaza Eels was the 4th most top 4 placing deck, yet it has managed to turn most of these performances into tournament wins by being the deck that has won the most Battle Roads so far. This result is really interesting and just shows that it can win because of some of the points that I made apparent earlier in the episode. The fact that it can one-hit KO anything and only relies on a stage 1 to support its strategy rather than a stage 2 such as Hydreigon, it is arguably going to be more consistent when it comes to being undefeated at an event, which you must do now to win a Battle Roads. However, Darkrai does hit the 2nd place spot with just 1 less win than Rayquaza, which shows that it can still stand its ground against anything else, as it has that slight advantage over Electric by being able to take those KOs and snipe KOs on it when Hydreigon hits the field to save Darkrai's energy. Zekromeos and Darkrai follow in 3rd and 4th with 17 and 15 wins respectively, and Ho-Oh has also moved up the table by grabbing an impressive 9 wins so far. Garchomp again shows a disappointing result by winning just 3 events, which shows how it can fizzle out very quickly in the late game, but can still take very quick wins to gain some form of success. One more deck to note is Terrakion Mewtwo Bouffalant, which takes the fighting advantage of Terrakion EX, the Mewtwo counter itself, Mewtwo, and the great EX attacker Bouffalant, and puts them all into one deck. This deck just takes advantage of what the metagame has become and sticks it to the dark types, gives it a Mewtwo counter, and also gives you a non-EX attacker that can two-shot all EXs, even with Eviolite. The deck isn't amazingly consistent, but can obviously stick it to the meta by taking 4 wins at the moment. So that is pretty much your Battle Road series all wrapped up for you as of today. These results are sort of what we expected, but Rayquaza is currently taking pole position, with Darkrai Hydreigon sitting in second, trying to claim back its crown. I hope this episode helps you out for trying to predict the metagame that's developed so far when you go out for your final Battle Roads tournaments, and also helps you to prepare for regionals, which start very soon as well. So thank you for watching this week's episode of PokeClass, and always, please leave a like, comment down below and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching and have a great week.